westmost side is on the Carse of Stirling, a huge, great flat plain created millennia ago from the river, the Forth estuary. So what I have is 160 odd acres of very heavy clay marine clay soils, mineral rich, which grows very famous, the Carse of Stirling hay. Part of the farm also, a national nature reserve, Flanders Moss. So it's a small farm. I have a small herd of rare breed Shetland cattle. I also have renovated the steading and the hayloft into a space for workshops, small seminars, training sessions, and in addition to that, more recently I have 3 yurts called Trossachs yurts, which is come and stay on a farm and live as a nomad in luxury. It's relatively recent that the beavers have arrived, and it became quite obvious in early January, in the winter, that they had arrived. First of all, the most noticeable was they took a great chunk out of this goat willow behind us. A half a metre square of bark must have been one evening's worth. And then on closer look, walking down the river, I've planted a lot of willow myself over the years, and they had helped themselves to the small willow rods, the whips, and chopped them all down. Some of them they'd stripped the bark, so they'd left their remnants. They hadn't done their washing up yet, and it was quite clear they'd had a rampage.
So the background of beavers in this river system is that this is part of the Forth catchment, and we had our first reports of beavers moving into this area into the Forth itself, actually in the Lenny in 2012, the summer of 2012, and that they'd have come over from probably the Erne itself, and since then the numbers have increased, and we had them in 2018 quite significantly downstream of here, and then slightly closer 2021, and then my understanding is that just in the last few months they've actually moved up into this area as well. The beavers they're territorial, so they live in these family groups, and what happens is the dominant pair will produce offspring, and the offspring will grow up, and when they get to about 2 years old they start thinking about moving home, and they'll start moving up and down the rivers looking for places to settle, and they'd like to settle with a mate, so they'll also be looking for available beavers who've also settled as well, so you're looking for those two things, and so that tends to happen over the spring and summer and into the autumn. So you've got a kind of a peak season probably in the spring when things really start moving and beavers move around, and then it reaches a kind of rhythm over the summer, autumn, and then winter there's very little movement of animals at all.
The biggest issue, I suppose, from a personal point, is that this is a flat as a pancake floodplain, and the house is at 40 feet above sea level, so potentially there is flooding of the house. In terms of the business, one of the diversifications is 3 yurts called Trossachs yurts, and they are in this woodland here where we're standing, and they are on platforms, and they are raised platforms because I know it does flood here. But if the beavers were to move in and dam this wee burn here, then it could create a wonderful habitat of wet woodland, but that might not be what I want. In fact, it is not what I want to run my Trossachs yurts business, because the yurts will become crannogs. This little burn here is the watercourse that comes off Flanders Moss National Nature Reserve, and the conservation management of Flanders Moss is to dam up all the drainage off the moss to hold the water on the moss. So if we could do a deal with the beavers and get them to build a dam, not at just where we are here, but up the way at the point where, in fact at the top of my property where there are still trees, then a dam there would create flooding and wet up the Flanders Moss National Nature Reserve edge, which is exactly what I've been doing with NatureScot over the last 30 years. For conservation matters, which wouldn't impact on my business, perhaps we could just persuade them as to where they put their dam. Maybe we could move them up the watercourse, I don't know.
Well, that's the technique you would use in this situation. So this ditch is too small to do anything in terms of mitigation. So we can offer in other sites, like we can offer what we call a flow device, which is a pipe through a dam and it's got with an intake cage upstream.
Right.
And the beavers can't figure out how the dam's drained, and therefore you can drop the water level and manage it as you wish.
Yeah.
But something in a ditch this small, the beavers will always find the inlet for the pipe and block it up so it doesn't work. So there you manage it, by taking it out, and the legislation states that if you take it out within the 2 weeks of the dam appearing, then basically it's not a protected structure. So otherwise a dam could be considered a protected structure. So you take it out frequently, every more than 2 weeks I would suggest actually, but 2 weeks is the maximum age before you have to apply for a license, and then you take it out properly. So you can dissuade them if you do it right at the start. In a site like this, you might dissuade them and they might move upstream as you want, or again down into the main channel and somewhere else. But when you take it out, you certainly want to level the bed of the burn, the bed of the ditch, so that there's no. What beavers do when they build a dam is they not only put sticks in, but they then on the upstream side they then dredge the bed of the ditch up, so it creates a deeper pool behind it. So when you take the sticks out, you've still got that pool and that drop, and that creates a trigger for the beavers to come back in and re-dam.
Right.
So you've got to level that, do it properly,
Right.
and sometimes it works, and you can dissuade them. So yeah, so if this, for example, if this woodland that you've planted here, if retaining some of these trees was part of the business for the yurts, then we'd recommend tree wrapping, and the simplest method is actually to get a weld mesh, and you wrap it around the tree, and there's advice on our website about how to do that. So you don't wrap it tight to the tree, you leave it space and make sure that there's no roots exposed underneath, and you stake that into the ground, and that'll self-support itself.
Right.
It'd be difficult to wrap every tree in a wood. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I think it's a few key trees, and then if a beaver fells one or two, a lot of them will sprout very effectively back up from the stump as well. So if you go onto the nature.scot website,
Right.
and probably the easiest thing is to go up to the search box and just type in beaver and search, but there is a page called Beaver Mitigation Scheme, and that details the sort of mitigation that we help you with, and also advice on how best to carry it out, and it links to videos, and you'll find lots of information there.